Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to the Chestnut channel. Thanks so much for being here with us. My great friend John Demos from the South Berwick Historical Society, the Old Berwick Historical Society in South Berwick, Maine. That's a twister for the Wildcats sometimes.
That's
John
right.
is with us here again for another segment. You probably saw our other ones, hopefully, about the Covenanters' wars and the POWs that came to New England as prisoners and indentured servants. We're here once again for the first part of a three-part series. The first one is going to encompass the entire two or more decades of the 17th century, of all the battles and wars that went on. And the second one, we will talk about armaments and tactical advancements that occurred during those periods. The third one will be the Battle of Marston Moor. Focus right on that battle itself. So thanks so much, John, for being here with us once again.
My pleasure, and thank you for inviting me again. And I've been really enjoying doing the research for this, and it's filling in a lot of blanks for me, which is great. So
Oh, good.
happy for that. So again, thank you so much for bringing me back. And what I've been able to do, I mean, I've done a lot of research on the Scots Covenanters who came here after the battles of Dunbar and Worcester to the U.S., which is so fascinating. And
Yes,
we did the earlier one on the Battle of Dunbar. We'll have to do one on Worcester at some point in the future too, to
right.
sort of wrap up the last battle of the Civil War.
That
But
would be
this
good.
time, what you wanted to do, what you asked me to do was let's do something with a battle and talk about the armaments and tactics and that kind of thing. And I, I took on a lot, but I'm having a blast. I'm having a great time. So what we're going to start with, we've got a three-part series at this point. And what I wanted to do is go back and really look at what brought about the War of the Three Kingdoms or the English Civil War and led us up to the Battle of Marston Moor eventually in the third part,
Okay.
which I chose because it's the largest conflict of the English Civil War. And also, it's a battle where two leaders, the Scottish leader David Leslie, who a lot of people are familiar with, who was leading the Scottish troops at Dunbar and Worcester, and Cromwell, who was leading the parliamentary forces, were actually on the same side in the Battle of Marston Moor and the early part of the English Civil War. But
Hmm.
previous to that, there was King Charles was making war with the Scots in the so-called Bishops' Wars, which preceded the English Civil War. So I
Okay.
first of all wanted to say, okay, I'm the vice president and archivist for Old Berwick Historical Society. I am a retired environmental activist from some time ago, and I'm not John Putnam Demos, the famous historian who's marvelous and brilliant. I just reread his book on the Salem witch trials recently. He's
Hmm.
fantastic. Um, but I'm I'm not a professional historian. I'm an amateur. And to paraphrase a 1990s TV medicine ad, which you may remember, I'm not a real historian. I only play one in cyberspace. So anyway,
Nice.
so the War of the Three Kingdoms itself lasted for 9 years,
Hmm.
whereas the length of the U.S. Civil War was 4 years, which is a long time, April 1861 to April 1865.
Right.
And Ken Burns, with his crew and everybody,
Yes.
devoted 11 hours to the retelling of that. This English Civil War lasted 9 years, 1642 to 1651, and I'm about to try to summarize for folks out there about a half of that history in the next 45 minutes or so,
Okay.
perhaps an hour. So, to misquote Shakespeare, I hope what I am about to present to you is not just a tale told by an idiot full of storm and fury, signifying nothing, but maybe something that you can really use to improve your understanding of this tumultuous time in human history.
Sure.
So, moving on. This is part one, religious strife and political strife precipitating the Civil War. And this is a story that begins over 400 years ago. So this faded page, I thought, nicely represents. This is a page from a military tactical book, and I've got some other clips of this from this book later on in the second part. It's really a pictorial metaphor, the faded photograph,
Mm.
for the loss or distortion of truth through time. Records are lost. The participants' testimony is long gone
Yep.
and often been purposefully distorted because the winners usually go on to write the history of this kind of thing.
Very true.
So I will get into the details now. And Ray, please interrupt me at any point for any questions or clarifications. I don't want to confuse people. And
Okay.
for the audience out there, I've tried very hard to be as accurate as possible, including the imagery that's I'm showing being from the actual battles, because I've found, to my dismay, and just generally in, watching YouTube or watching other things, you see paintings or films or something that are supposed to represent something. I saw one recently where it was talking about German troops, and it's an excellent video program. But at one point, there was a clip of American soldiers, and in this case, I've found and I've corrected a few that are misused as representing a battle
Right.
that are really not that battle. So I will point out the ones I know. And out there, anybody, if you see any mistakes I have, I'm going to be doing talks about these in the next the end of this year using this and next year. And so I'd like to correct anything. And if you could just contact
Okay.
Ray and find out any corrections. So
Sure.
onward. So I'm using this wonderful map from 1632 by a fellow named Guillaume Blau, and he was a Dutch cartographer, atlas
Mm.
maker, publisher, along with his son, and he's considered one of the notable figures of the Netherlands School of Cartography during its golden age. And this map is really beautifully accurate, wonderfully accurate. I thought I'd found
Mm.
some mistakes in it, but it turns out not to be the case. And I'm going to be using this map, pulling excerpts to follow the battle so we can sort of make some sense of where the troop movements were.
Okay.
And again, what I've taken is I've tried to touch on the most important battles from what I can tell. But again, if others have suggestions, I would appreciate any. Now, here are some beautiful portraits of James the Fourth of Scotland, who became James the First of England. And these sort of represent, too, again, how reality is often distorted intentionally. And in this case, I assume, I mean, these beautiful portraits look so accurate, and yet the vanity of the subject and the vanity of the artist probably made some changes. Who knows?
Sure.
And so, but they're wonderful paintings. Now, to give some background on after Queen Elizabeth I died in 1603, she had no heir because that was a very tricky period when her father, Henry VIII, and the male heirs, his male children kept dying, and some suspicions by some people that it might have been syphilis,
Hmm.
but one survived, but he died very soon, Edward, and so Elizabeth got the throne, and she was unable to have children either. So by the time she died in 1603, James, who was the James IV of Scotland, became king of the three kingdoms,
Okay.
and so this is and he moves to England to become James the First. And the three kingdoms were the aspirations of the British monarchy for a long time to the conquest of Scotland and Ireland. Ireland had
Yes.
lost its last king of the really of the full country back when the Normans invaded after 1066.
Okay.
So um, and and then his son Charles takes over the throne in 1625 after the death of his father. And his early reign was really a lot of problems
Mm.
he was running into. He spent the first decade suffering setbacks with his subjects and the parliament due to his belief in the divine right of kings, his absolute belief in the divine right of kings,
Yes.
and his religious policies and taxation. Not having the full power of the purse because of the changes that had come to the monarchy in England with a parliament. Uh, he used forced loans and unpopular measures to raise the money he believed was due to him that led to charges of being an authoritarian. His repeated dissolution of parliament over the years only led to stronger charges of tyranny. And then he married Henrietta Maria of France, who was a practicing Catholic. So that raised a lot of fears among the Protestant population that he was p- pushing popish policies and
Right.
secretly planning to turn the country back over to Rome's control. So that led him to all kinds of problems and ultimately to his demise. Now, uh, to give a little background on the religious, and you were talking about the Roman Catholic Church and the Episcopalian,
Mm.
and the Protestant and the Anglican Church, the churches, and this, of course, dates from Martin Luther's challenge to Catholic rule in
Yep.
1517. He posted the 95 Theses on the All Saints Church in Wittenberg, Germany. The printing press was invented, and
Mm.
that helped the printing of his Bible to get out to the general public. The Catholic Church always held, they didn't want the layperson to read the Bible themselves. They wanted that communicated, and they spoke in Latin, and that only changed more recently, too, in our
Okay.
times. But
They wanted to have that arm's length from people, right?
well, it's control, yes. So
Yeah.
it's control of the interpretation so that the
Yep.
church is the official determiner of what the Bible means.
Aha.
And
Good point.
what Luther was doing, he saw the corruption in the Catholic Church, so he was looking to reform the church. Thus, this was called the Reformation.
Yes.
But what it did do, it ended the Catholic, or otherwise known as universal, which is what Catholic means, church, uh, and began fragmenting into Protestant pieces. So the Protestant religion uh, begins to break up. You get the Anglican and the Episcopalian, and Puritan sects are only a part of the diverse numbers. I mean, you get Calvinists and you've got all kinds of other
Wow.
sects that are over in the country. But the three we'll be concerned with, or four, are the Catholics in Ireland, the Episcopalians largely in England,
Yes.
and the Anglican Church that Henry VIII had set up in England, and then the Puritans who came out of that. So the differences between these three, the Catholics spoke to God through the Roman Pope. The Anglican Church was led by a sovereign, or the king, Henry at the time, and now led by James and Charles,
Hmm.
while the Episcopalians had no single leader. The Catholics have bishops and cardinals in their form of Christianity. The Anglicans only have bishops, and the Presbyterians don't allow any bishops. They just have minister. They have their ministers.
Yes.
And the Puritans thought everybody else had the whole thing wrong. They threw all the golden bling and that were in the churches and only let ministers intervene between themselves and God.
Hmm.
That's very much of an oversimplification of this, but it gives us a wee bit of a clue as to why
Yes.
Irish, Scots, and English were so keen to start hacking each other up. And in
Right.
1638, due to pressure inflicted on Scotland by James and Charles, the Scots signed the Covenant,
Mm.
Scottish Covenant. So we'll refer to the Scottish forces as the Covenanters from this point.
Okay. Good
And
point, because this is a tangle sometimes. Even, I've been trying to learn this myself and relay it to other people and get them excited about this, and it is a confusing tangle. It
and
really
there are
is.
lots of different names, and I'll refer to the forces of King Charles, who as the Royalists,
Yes.
and they can be called the Roundheads. They've been called all kinds of different names too, bad names, I'm sure, by certain people, and and then refer to yeah. So the from now on, it'll be mostly the Covenanters representing the Scottish forces, the
Yeah.
parliamentarians who opposed Charles.
And royalists are, of course, backing Charles the First, and the Covenanters will see have a thought, and then they decide to switch over at one point.
The Covenanters originally are fighting Charles in the Bishops' Wars, which I'm going to talk about in a second.
Okay.
They then are pulled into the parliamentary civil war with the Royalists, who the king represents, and the parliamentarians who
Right.
are fighting them. So
Okay.
here's a little slide, and I don't have a source for this, but John Melville, the Episcopo Mastrix, or the Scourge of Bishops. So he was a Scottish uh, uh, clerical leader, an important one. The
Yeah.
Scourge of Bishops. I like that. So, okay, so the First Bishops' War breaks out because Charles was trying to force the Anglican service on Presbyterians in Scotland. And that triggered the First War in 1639. Again, this is a very brief overview of things.
Hmm.
And what you've got up in this corner is great. This is great. The rioting at a church service in Scotland over the use of the Anglican service in St. Giles Cathedral before the outbreak of the Bishops' War. And this says the Archprelate of St. Andrews in Scotland reading the new service book in his pontifical something assaulted by men and women with crickets, stools,
Cricket stools. Yes.
cricket stools, sticks and stones, which
Yeah.
can break your bones. Yeah.
I looked at that myself. You can see the little stools in the air there.
Yeah, I know.
Yes.
Bunch of stools, which is wonderful. Now, there was only one major battle the Scottish War, which the first Bishops' War.
Okay.
Again, the conflict being over the fact that the Episcopalians did not believe in bishops, and they didn't want to use the service, of course, of the Anglican Church. But there was the Battle of Brig of Dee, or the Brigo Dee, June 18th and 19th of 1639. It was the
Ah.
only serious action of the First Bishops' War. And the Covenanters, again, the Scots side, won that against Charles and the Royalists and the parliamentarian. At that time,
Okay. Yes.
parliamentarians would have been unified with the king, backing the king. And here's a wonderful watercolor showing this 14th century bridge. And this, I think
Hmm.
it looks like an aqueduct. You pointed that out to me at one point, but this is the actual bridge today.
Ah.
This is James Graham, Earl of Montrose, who was the Covenanter, the commander of the Scots,
Hmm.
and James Gordon, the Marquis of Huntley, who was the Royalist commander at that battle. And what had happened was during this war that the Scottish and English armies assembled on the border sometime in 1639, getting ready for war. But most of the skirmishing was up in the northeast, and this battle was up near Aberdeen,
Ah.
which the bridge crosses the river at Aberdeen out there.
Okay.
This was the only one. After this, the troops withdrew and they agreed to a treaty on the 20th of June, 1639.
Right.
Second Bishop's War was also a brief affair initiated by the Scots in response to Charles' first attempt to raise an army after the First Bishop's War. So they were preparing for war again. Again, he was intent on trying to get his way with imposing his will on the Scots, and they wanted to control Scotland and control Ireland too, which was there'd been a lot of strife going on there, and again the Catholic Church in the majority of Ireland until a certain point, which I'll describe in a minute.
Yep.
Uh, the the only major battle here was the Battle of Newburn, and Newburn uh, was August 28th, 1640, was a decisive fight between the Scottish Covenanter army under Alexander Leslie and the English forces led by Lord Conway. Now, this Alexander Leslie is not to be confused with David Leslie, and I'll refer to him in the future as the Earl of Leslie.
Okay.
The Earl of his term is as an Earl, and then refer to David Leslie, the general, as we get later on in this. The Scottish victory allowed the Scots to cross the River Tyne, and this is Berwick on Tyne, on Tweed. I'm sorry, this should be Tweed,
Hmm.
and um, and to capture Newcastle and seize control of London's vital coal supply there.
Yes.
The defeat forced Charles to call Parliament to raise money again and to pay the Scottish army, a move that significantly contributed to the events leading to the English Civil War. Now, meanwhile, coming up in 1641, so after this, again, a truce in the Bishop's Second War, the Irish Rebellion breaks out. Now, for a little background on that, I'm not sure if it was Elizabeth that initiated pushing Protestant settlers into northern Scotland.
I
As
believe it
Northern
was
Ireland.
right at the end, right at the end of her control. I think she did
Okay.
just begin it.
And the idea was to control Northern Ireland and essentially, try to take over the country eventually. And
Yep.
a lot of them were Scots who had been forced off their own land. I mean, terrible story there too, but they became the Ulster Scots that we refer to now. And I'm descended from both Ulster Scots and from probably Catholic Scots.
Uh-huh.
But and Episcopalian Scots also, I'm sure. But the leader of the Irish Rebellion, and this is uh, Phelim O'Neill. He was the chief traitor of all Ireland, it says here. And then this is an important piece of propaganda, and there was a lot of it. Lies about the Irish atrocities in 1641 led to the barbarity of Cromwell's later invasion. Now, this was a depiction of the slaughter of innocent Protestants by the Catholics, and there
Hmm.
were many others of those that were used to stir up trouble later. So again, this is just a brief touching on the Irish Rebellion. Had been going on because the English had been stealing land from the Irish, and again, the religious differences, and this was a conflict that would go on to our present day until, 20 years ago, whenever that was.
Right.
Charles, okay, let's see. O'Neill issued a proclamation of, he tried to seize Dublin Castle uh, and quickly overran most of Ulster, center of the most recent land confiscations. He then issued proclamation of Donegal, a forgery, claiming he had been authorized by Charles I to secure Ireland against his opponents in England and Scotland. So here's a Catholic claiming that Charles, who's
Yeah.
suspected of being a Catholic, has sent him,
Mm.
started a revolution. And that caused a lot of royalist Irish, Anglo-Irish Catholics to respond by joining the uprising, and the rebellion spread throughout Ireland. So just
Wow.
touching on that right now. Okay, so Charles then, all kinds of troubles are breaking out in Charles rules. I mean, the Bishops' Wars has been settled. He's got the troubles in Ireland and dealing with that. But the Parliament, they're on the verge of revolution. The Parliament against the King, and you've got a Parliament that's now controlled largely by a lot of Puritans are in control, like people like Cromwell, and
Okay. Yeah.
and so Charles leaves London in January of 1642, and and he leaves to the Parliament the largest city and port and all the weapons in
Yes,
London.
you said this to me before. I see that now, the point of it. Wow.
So he sets up his headquarters in Nottingham, further north. He's heavily outnumbered by the parliamentary forces at this point. And over the winter of 1641 and 42, many towns are strengthening their defenses and purchasing weapons, not necessarily only because of the Civil War, but the lurid details of the Irish Rebellion in 1641 meant many more were concerned about reports of a possible Catholic invasion
Ah,
of Scotland. Again, that Charles was supposedly cooking up, which again was just heating up the whole bit. I mean, dealing with disinformation just like what we're dealing with nowadays, same kind of all kinds of bullshit going
right.
on.
No, and no way to verify it.
This is a beautiful painting of
Hmm.
Charles I raising his standard at Nottingham Castle, painted by Henry Davis Dawson in 1847. And that's showing Nottingham Castle.
Yes.
So the outbreak of the First English Civil War occurs in the fall of 1642.
Okay.
And again, Charles had been holed up in Nottingham, and he moves his army west to Shrewsbury. You see
Mm.
that because he's getting ready to attack down through Worcester back to London. And the Battle of and Worcester will come into play again with the Second Battle in 1651, 10 years, 9 years from now. Charles is, again, he's hoping he's going over to Wales here,
Yep.
which Shrewsbury's in England, but it's on the border of Wales.
Uh-huh.
And the parliamentary army is shadowing Charles' movements because they know he's moving around and going to head down to London eventually.
Okay.
But he's heading toward uh, to pick up troops from apparently from Wales
Mm.
or some royalist supporters who are going to move from Wales and support him on the attack on London.
Yes, I read he was hoping for sympathizers in Wales is what he was doing, right?
Yes. Um, but the Essex, who was the commander of the parliamentary forces, had learned about his plans, and Essex cut him off at the Battle of Powick Bridge, just below Worcester.
Ah,
And this was where the first major encounter of the war took place on September 23rd. And it was a relatively minor royalist victory for Charles, established the reputation of those of whose cavalry uh, gained a psychological edge over their parliamentarian opponents. And that was led by Prince Rupert, who will come into play later in the Battle of Marston, is very important too.
yes.
So again, this is outside Worcester. The next battle in 1651 would occur in Worcester. And
Mm.
although the Royalist uh, army outnumbered numbered about 15,000. Much of the infantry were armed with clubs or scythes. They were better equipped. Their opponents were half trained,
Mhm.
poorly disciplined. So you got the king's army with clubs and scythes, and you've got the parliamentary army, which was always amazing. Well, much better equipped, but their troops were half trained, poorly disciplined,
Mm.
with inadequate supplies. When Charles headed for London, Essex tried to block his route, and on October 23rd, the two armies fought a bloody and chaotic and indecisive battle at Edge Hill. And
Wow.
that battle is here. Was it somewhere in this area? Again,
Okay.
an attempt to go toward London.
Right.
The Parliamentary Army fell back on London, fighting two inconclusive actions at Brentwood and Turnham Green on the 12th and 16th of November. Closest the Royalists came to taking London during the war, they withdrew to Oxford. So the Royalists go to Oxford and the Parliamentarians are back in London at the end of the year.
Okay.
And Oxford now became the capital for the king, King Charles. So
Mm.
elsewhere, Sir William Weller secured the southeast of England for Parliament, while December Lord Wilmot captured Marlborough for the Royalists, opening communications between Oxford and their forces at Langcheston, Cornwall. So again, there's so much information here. Don't worry about it, and just hopefully, get the gist of what's going on. So,
Yes, we're doing great. Thank you.
okay, thank you. So next slide. Now, over the winter, Essex Army is the parliamentary army under Essex is holed up at Windsor. We're of course famous for Windsor Castle, where the the, the palace and the residence of the kings.
Oh, yes.
And Charles was by degrees consolidating his position in the region of Oxford.
Okay.
So hostilities break out again on December 1st, 1642, at the Battle of Peace Bridge. And the Earl of Newcastle was advancing with an army of 6,000 from Newcastle on Tyne to York to reinforce the local royalists. So you can see this is the River Tees and heading
Yep.
toward York. Despite claiming only to suffer minimal casualties, the parliamentarians retreated with insufficient troops to hold the entire area. His task was further complicated by parliamentarian forces under Lord Fairfax and his son, which retained key towns like Hull and Leeds. Then on January 19th, the Royalists secure a victory in Cornwall and take Cornwall for the king.
Okay.
On the 28th of January, 1643, Sir William Breton uh, leads won a significant parliamentary victory over Royalist forces at the First Skirmish or Battle of Nantwich. This win enabled Breton to establish Nantwich as the headquarters for the parliamentarian forces in Cheshire. So here's Nantwich again on the Liverpool side. So you've got conflicts happening on various parts of the country at this point.
Right.
But in early 1643, again, you see the Royalists really have the upper hand for some time. Now, the King's army is based around a fortified area around Oxford, once again,
Okay.
which he counted was sufficient to use up Essex, who's the parliamentarian leader, general's forces. In Yorkshire and in the West, Royalist armies were to fight their way inwards towards London. And in the early part of the English Civil War in 1643, it really was a high mark for Charles I, as his forces had momentum and were in control of a large portion of England and the parliamentarians and the Covenanters. But a turning point came at the end of 1643 when Parliament formed a crucial alliance with the Scots And in 1644, the parliamentarians gained decisive victories. So I've listed here, you've got the royalist victories at Cornwall on the 13th, another battle there.
Yep.
Chalgrove Field, which a class of royalist forces under Prince Rupert defeated the parliamentarian and the Earl of Essex. Adwalton Moor, which again is out near Liverpool, was an important battle, and a royalist victory where the Earl of Newcastle defeated the parliamentarian army commanded by Lord Fairfax. You've got the Battle of Lansdowne Hill, which I pictured here.
Okay.
Hard fought but inclusive battle where royalists forced the parliamentarians to retreat, but the royalists have suffered heavy uh, casualties. You've got the Battle of Chalgrove Field, where royalist forces defeated the Earl of Essex that I mentioned before, and this is the Battle of Round with the Chalgrove Field and Roundway Down, a couple of the battles I mentioned up here. And here's Essex and Charles leading his troops, some interesting things. So at
Yes.
this point, the royalists really are on top of the game. And Charles has signed a 1-year truce with the Irish rebels because he's trying to bring back the troops from Ireland to fight
Yes.
on the royalist side. And this leads up to the Battle of Newbury, which um, the first Battle of Newbury, and it was an indecisive battle, but it stopped the Parliament. It stopped the attack on London. And here we have the Earl of Essex returning to London after the first Battle of Newbury. So this was really the high water mark for the English, for the Royalist side in 1643.
Okay.
Now, at this point, Charles is trying to bring back, they're looking for alliances. He's looking for perhaps alliances on the continent.
Yep.
The the parliamentary forces are looking to sign a, a a covenant with the Covenanters, the Scots, to
Yes.
bring them in this on the side, their side against the king, which they are happy to do, except they get a they make a deal assuming that when the parliamentarians win, that that the parliamentarians will agree to the formal establishment of the Presbyterian religion
Hmm.
in all of the Britain. And that was really a foolish decision to make. But here's
Yes.
you signing the League Covenant, September 25th, 1643. And you've got the English and Scots armies at first ready to fight, lovingly embrace each other and part kin to friends. So that
So
was a
nice.
cool piece. Now, okay, so now you triggered the Scots invasion of England. And here's Alexander Leslie, who's the Earl of Leven. Again, not to be confused with David Leven.
Okay.
Leslie they were not related, and he'll come in later. They crossed the Old Berwick Bridge up
Oh
here
boy.
on Berwick into England in January 19, 1643, 1644. And then they're moving down toward Newcastle in February the 3rd. The royal forces retreat from Sunderland in March, which is about here.
Oh, they're giving ground fast. Yes.
Yes. And the Scots are coming up on Durham. And the key engagements in 1644 are at Nantwich, the Second Battle of Nantwich,
Oh, yes.
which again is Nantwich is outside Liverpool. And the second battle from February 3rd to October 20th, there was a siege. They besieged Nantwich, and that was on February 3rd, and that siege would last till October 27th. And after crossing the River Tweed on January 16th, the Earl of Leven, the Covenanter army under the Scots laid siege to Newcastle, which is again on the eastern side of the country.
Yep.
On March 29th, an important parliamentary victory spoiling royalist plans to retake southern England. On May 28th, the storming of Bolton, which
So we're going
is,
west to get going over towards the west again, or central
yes,
now.
we're out in the west and we're over toward Liverpool again here.
Yep, I
And the
see.
Battle of Bolton.
Yep.
This is known, come down to be known as the Battle of Bolton or the Bolton Massacre. And it was attack on the important parliamentary town and the alleged slaughter of 1,600 defendants by royalist forces under Prince Rupert again for the
Wow.
king. June 29th, the Battle of Coupray Bridge occurred,
Another bridge.
and another bridge near Banbury, and was a tactical victory for Charles I, maneuvering around Oxford to march west through the parliamentary army's main force. So here you have Newcastle again, an old picture of Newcastle. You've got
Yep.
the siege of Newcastle, which lasts for some time. Again, touching on the key battles, and again,
Sure.
it's
This is
pretty
fantastic,
confusing.
John. Really.
So now we're getting down up to the time, and this is pretty much where I've taken you through this. And I apologize for my confusion and any confusion I'm giving you, but again, we see a tremendous amount of fighting. The
Yes.
Royalists in early 1643 are really doing well, and by the end of the year, they're starting to do very poorly. And you have here the Battle of Bolton Hill occurs on March 24th, 1644. The Royalist General William Cavendish, who's the Marquis of Newcastle, faced the parliamentary commander Earl of Leven again at the Battle of Bolton Hill, March 24th and
Oh yeah.
25th. The Royalists retreated from that as far as Auckland Castle below Durham and were pursued by the Scots by March 25th. And then the Royalists crossed the River Tees, heading for York. So they're headed down here to York. And this
Oh
is
yes.
preparing the groundwork for the Battle of Marston Moor,
Indeed, sir.
which we will get to in the third section of this.
Right.
Uh, so the next one we will have is
Oh,
English Civil War and Armaments and Tactics, which will be a lot less confusing in many ways, hopefully.
well, well, over a few decades of fighting, you're unfortunately you're going to sharpen up your tactics and armaments, and you're going to learn things and learn very special and terrible ways to kill others. Unfortunately, this is what happened, and that's what you're going to document for us, John, I see.
And it's an interesting because clearly the armaments on either side were very similar. You get stuff captured on the battlefield,
Yep.
but they're all being fed weapons from the continent, and they're using much the same things. As I mentioned earlier, Charles had fled to early in the war and left behind all the armaments for the parliamentarians there too. So he had to rearm himself. Then
Right.
after part two, which we'll get together here in the near future, we'll go on to part three, the Battle of Marston Moor. So, and that I'm just going to focus on that one battle and break down that one battle. So,
Sure.
because it's one of the largest battles, and it's where David Leslie and Cromwell are on the same side and fighting the battle. They're side by side, and I speculate that this led to Leslie ended up facing Cromwell at Dunbar, which was a disaster because Cromwell's army was so, and Cromwell was such a master tactician.
It's 6 years
Excuse me.
ahead, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
After this, and then in a battle in 1651 at Worcester, the final battle of the major conflict of the English Civil War, Leslie parked his troops above the city of Worcester. Charles II has his forces in the city and is engaging Cromwell, and Leslie never engages in that fight at all. And I wonder if,
Hmm.
he'd seen
Ah,
how skillful Leslie was when he fought side by side with him, and then he got his butt handed to him at Dunbar,
I see.
and that maybe he decided not to engage. But that's just speculation on my part. So,
Oh,
but
interesting. Right.
and then I'm doing this on the behalf of the Old Berwick Historical Society. We promote awareness and appreciation for local and regional history through a variety of activities. And I first got involved with them 6 years ago and discovered the Scots prisoners, and
Hmm.
this was one of the key areas for the mills down here where the Scots worked their indentures off.
Yes.
The museum is open June to October, 1 to 4 p.m. on Sundays, and by appointment year round, and I can set up appointments right now. And you can go to our website at oldberwick.org, and to be continued.
This is wonderful, John. I think we've picked three very nice focuses for this project. The entire era itself, the armaments and military strategies, and one battle to focus on, because it would be tough to try to do more than one battle. There were so many, and this went fantastic, and I thank you for it. There's been a lot of work for John, my friends. I might provide the vehicle for this, a lot of it, but we've been back and forth for weeks about this, and John's been sharpening this up to what it was today for us. So thank you once again, John, and thank you to the society in South Berwick, Maine, for allowing us to have John's time for this.
And I appreciate it, my friend, too, the opportunity. So we will see you all soon.
All righty then. Touch not, everyone. Thanks for being with us.